Okay, let's unpack this. It's quite a story. A seemingly ordinary church volunteer, a mother, arrested for sexual misconduct with a child.
Yeah.
It's the kind of headline that really stops you cold.
It really does. And it immediately makes you think about, trust within communities, especially places like churches.
Exactly. So today, we're diving into the case of Natalie Sorrells. She's a 44-year-old volunteer youth worker, or was at Lake Point Church in Rockwall, Texas.
Mm-hmm.
And our mission really is to look past that initial shock. We want to understand the specific allegations, how the legal system handled it, and, what the ripple effects might be.
Right. We've got news reports, we've got the actual legal definitions to look at, and statements from the church itself, so a few different angles.
Yeah, trying to piece together a full picture for you. It's not just reading a news report, it's digging into the how and the why.
But I suppose how we even process this kind of thing when it happens with someone in a position of trust.
Well, the whole thing started to unravel when the victim's mother found something on her son's phone. Yeah, 13.
Okay.
She found deleted texts between him and Sorrells. And apparently Sorrells was calling him babe in these messages.
Wow. Okay, so that's an immediate red flag, obviously. That kind of discovery is often like the tipping point, isn't it?
It definitely seems like it was here. Because a few weeks after finding those texts, the boy told his mother that Sorrells had, he used the word molested him.
Right.
And that led to a forensic interview. This was at the Rockwall Children's Advocacy Center.
Mm-hmm. Those interviews are so crucial. They're designed to be supportive, to get the child's account accurately without adding more trauma.
And in that interview, he described multiple instances of inappropriate contact. Said it started back in April 2023.
So this wasn't just a one-off allegation. It points to potentially a pattern over some time.
The reports mention at least 2 specific times where she apparently touched him inappropriately.
And it's worth noting, the sources use that phrase, inappropriately touched. Legally, that can be distinct from, the more severe allegations involving penetration. The law draws lines there.
Right. And there were more explicit allegations, too. The victim talked about 2 specific incidents of sexual contact.
Okay.
One was supposedly in a car. Sorrells had picked him up after a football game.
Mm-hmm.
The other allegedly happened at a birthday party for Sorrells' own son.
See, that's what's so disturbing sometimes. These aren't hidden, isolated locations necessarily. A car ride, a kid's party, everyday settings.
Makes it so much harder to detect, I imagine.
Absolutely.
And here's a really kind of bizarre and disturbing detail.
Yeah.
During one of these alleged incidents, the boy said Sorrells' husband actually called her phone.
Called her while this was supposedly happening.
Yeah. And apparently he asked her if she was cheating on him.
Wow. That just adds another layer entirely. It suggests, a lot of potential underlying issues there. Very troubling.
And it wasn't just the alleged physical contact. The victim also reported that Sorrells gave him and his friends alcohol and tobacco multiple times.
Okay, so that's another element. While maybe not directly part of the sexual assault charges themselves, it does paint a picture of boundary-crossing behavior.
Yeah, disregarding laws protecting minors could be seen as grooming, perhaps?
It's certainly a behavior that can be used to gain influence or break down inhibitions, unfortunately, yes.
So with all these allegations piling up, Natalie Sorrells was arrested. That was February 20th, 2024.
Mm-hmm.
And the charges were serious from the get-go. 2 counts of aggravated sexual assault of a child and 2 counts of indecency with a child.
And those are very serious felonies under Texas law. Aggravated sexual assault, especially involving a child under 14, carries severe penalties. Indecency involves that inappropriate contact we mentioned, but with specific sexual intent.
She posted bond pretty quickly, though. Was out in about 6 days.
Right. Bond is common, but the legal process continues after that, obviously.
It went to trial.
Mm-hmm.
And the outcome here is really important to understand. She was convicted, but not on everything.
Okay.
She was found guilty on the 2 counts of indecency with a child, the ones involving sexual conduct. But, and this is key, she was acquitted, found not guilty of the 2 counts of aggravated sexual assault.
That's a really significant split verdict. It suggests the jury believed the evidence proved the inappropriate sexual contact for the indecency charges.
Right.
But maybe didn't meet the higher bar for aggravated sexual assault. That often involves proving penetration beyond a reasonable doubt, or perhaps other specific aggravating factors weren't proven sufficiently.
So the evidence threshold is different.
Exactly. And it shows how these legal definitions matter enormously in court. Proving penetration versus proving inappropriate touching can be very different challenges.
And the sentence reflects the convictions she did receive. 2.5 years for each indecency charge.
Okay.
And they run consecutively. So, one after the other. That adds up to 5 years in prison total.
Right. Consecutive sentencing definitely sends a message about the severity or the distinctness of the offenses. 5 years is a substantial amount of time.
Plus a $10,000 fine. Okay, so let's shift to the church's reaction. Lake Point Church. It's a big church, a mega church near Dallas, multiple locations.
Right, 6 locations, I think. And Sorrells volunteered at the Rockwall campus specifically with the youth.
Which puts the church's response under a microscope, naturally.
Absolutely. When these things happen involving someone connected to a religious institution, how they handle it is really critical for the community's trust.
They put out a statement. They said, look, we know about the arrest, but they also stated it was their current understanding that no inappropriate activity occurred on church premises at any church event.
Okay.
And that the minor involved was not under the direct leadership of the volunteer.
So they're drawing a line, essentially saying they believe this happened outside the scope of her church duties and off-church property.
Yeah, that seems to be the message. But they also said out of an abundance of caution. They immediately told parents at the church what was going on. They cut off Sorrells' access to any kids there and removed her from her volunteer job completely.
Which seems like the responsible thing to do, regardless of where they believe the acts occurred, taking immediate steps to prevent any possible future risks.
So they're taking the safety aspect seriously, even while stating their belief about the location.
It does. It's a necessary action in these circumstances.
They also pointed out their policies, background checks for all volunteers, mandatory training.
Standard procedures, yes, important, but as we know, background checks aren't crystal balls. They don't always predict future actions.
And the effectiveness of training is always a question too, I suppose.
It is. What kind of training? How is it reinforced? Those are ongoing questions for any organization working with children.
So to really get the legal side, it helps to look at the actual Texas laws. We have the definitions here for the charges involved.
Yeah, let's break those down a bit. Understanding the letter of the law gives important context to the charges and the verdict.
Okay, first, indecent assault. That's Texas Penal Code Section 22.012. Basically, it's about non-consensual touching of private areas or contact with certain bodily fluids done with the intent to arouse or gratify sexual desire.
Right. And normally it's a misdemeanor, but it can be bumped up to a felony with prior offenses or if the perpetrator is like a healthcare provider misusing their position.
So the conviction for indecency with a child sexual conduct fits under this. The sexual conduct part specifies it involved a child. And the 2 counts mean the jury found 2 distinct instances meeting this definition.
Exactly. That specific intent element is key for indecency charges.
Now, the charges she was acquitted on, aggravated sexual assault, Section 22.021. This is a big one. First-degree felony.
For sure, serious, yes.
It's sexual assault plus aggravating factors, things like causing serious injury, threats, using a weapon, or crucially here, the victim being under 14.
And the acquittal suggests the prosecution couldn't prove those aggravating factors, or perhaps the underlying sexual assault element involving penetration, beyond a reasonable doubt.
Which leads us to the definition of sexual assault itself, Section 22.01. This is the one that specifically involves non-consensual penetration. Various forms are listed or causing sexual organ contact.
And the law is clear. If the victim is under 17, there cannot be legal consent, period.
And so, putting it together, the jury found evidence for the indecent contact, but not enough evidence to meet the legal definition of penetration required for the sexual assault charges or the other aggravating factors.
That seems to be what the verdict indicates, yes. It highlights that legal distinction between types of contact.
And underpinning all this is the basic assault definition in 22.01 causing injury, threats, or offensive contact. That's the foundation.
So you see this layering effect in the law from basic assault up through aggravated sexual assault. The specific facts determine which charges apply and whether they can be proven.
Okay, let's think wider now. Implications. There's a law firm, Andrade plus Foote, who looked at this case. They raised a concern many people probably share, that people who do these things often specifically seek out positions where they have access to kids, like a volunteer youth worker.
That's a well-documented pattern, unfortunately. Positions of trust can be exploited.
And it leads to that awful question. Could be other victims?
It's a legitimate and necessary question to ask, even if it's uncomfortable. It highlights the need for ongoing vigilance in organizations.
The lawyers also mentioned civil lawsuits. not just the criminal case we've been discussing.
Right. The civil justice system runs parallel to the criminal one.
They pointed out that for survivors, a civil suit isn't always just about money. It can be about getting justice, getting validation, having their story heard, finding some kind of resolution.
That's a really important point. Civil suits can provide a different kind of accountability and can be part of the healing process for victims and their families, giving them a voice in a different forum.
At the same time, we should restate what Lake Point Church said. Their understanding is that none of this happened on their property or during church events.
Yes, and that distinction is important for them, institutionally. It highlights that an individual's actions, even someone connected to the group, don't always equate to institutional failure or negligence, though institutions still have responsibilities for safeguarding.
So wrapping this up, what are the key takeaways? We have Natalie Searles, a church volunteer, accused of misconduct with a 13-year-old boy.
Allegations of inappropriate touching and sexual contact.
She ends up convicted on 2 counts of indecency with a child, but acquitted of the more severe aggravated sexual assault charges.
Resulting in that 5-year consecutive prison sentence plus the fine.
And the church responded by stating their belief it didn't happen on their watch, essentially, but taking immediate action to remove her and protect other children.
And it really underscores how the legal system differentiates between types of offenses based on very specific definitions and evidence.
It leaves us with some big questions for you, the listener, to think about. What does this kind of case tell us about keeping kids safe in community settings?
Yeah, even in places we assume are safe havens. And how do these precise legal terms actually play out in the messiness of real life?
What's the ongoing role for communities, for institutions, in prevention and response?
These aren't easy questions, but they're vital ones that cases like this force us to confront. It's about learning and improving.
If you are interested in digging deeper yourself, you can look up those Texas Penal Code sections we mentioned, 22.01, 22.01, 22.01, 22.012, 22.021. Get a feel for the legal language.
Or explore resources on child safety and abuse prevention. Knowledge is a key part of protection.
Understanding these specifics, the case, the law, the responses, helps all of us be more aware. So maybe a final thought to leave you with. This whole situation with Natalie Searles really throws a spotlight on that constant need for vigilance, for understanding how to protect vulnerable people. It's a stark reminder that appearances aren't everything, and the way we respond, legally and as a community, is incredibly complex.